Long before love songs and lace, a wedding was never about two hearts. We're in Mesopotamia, around 2350 BCE, in the city of Lagash, where the first written marriage contracts appear. On a clay tablet, a scribe presses wedge-shaped symbols into wet earth: the price of oil, the measure of barley, the transfer of a daughter. Marriage is listed beside rules for goats and grain. It is not poetry, it is commerce. The bride, historians say, was appraised like the harvest. Her worth could be reckoned in shekels of silver, jars of sesame oil, skins of beer, or even land rations. Sometimes the dowry matched her physical weight. 1 mina of silver for every 60 kilograms of flesh, though most often it was simply what her father could bargain. To marry her off was to balance the books of a household, to turn bloodline into credit. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive, and I'd love to hear from you too. Where are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Now, together we shall slip into the journey. You stand there, in that dry heat. The sky is white as ash. A priest in linen wraps a cord of wool around your wrist, and the groom's knotting you together 3 times. It isn't a symbol of love, it's proof of transfer, a gesture that says this life now belongs here. Someone pours perfumed oil over your joined hands. It stings where the sun has cracked your skin. Incense rises, thick and bitter, carrying the scent of cedar and burnt figs. Behind you, your mother whispers a prayer to Inanna, goddess of fertility and war, a strange patron for something so fragile. The contract is read aloud. It names the husband, his lineage, the size of the field he'll receive with you. It lists what happens if you fail to bear sons. Your voice is not required. The witnesses nod, a seal is pressed into clay, and the future hardens as the tablet dries. Records from nearby Newsy show that a bride could be loaned to another man if her husband was infertile, as long as the first retained ownership of any child born. Other tablets describe compensation for a stolen bride: 5 shekels and a sheep. A woman was property, yet also the means of property's survival. Without her, no heir. Without an heir, no land. Without land, no peace. Still, the ceremony has its beauty. Someone beats a small drum. A boy releases doves toward the river. Neighbors bring bread baked with dates and salt. And for a moment, just a moment, it feels like celebration. The air hums with relief. Another alliance secured, another winter protected. Later, as darkness folds over the mud brick houses, you walk toward the groom's home. The torches flicker against the walls, painting shadows that move like ghosts of all the brides before you. Inside, the bed is covered in woven reeds. A jug of beer waits beside it. You are expected to drink, to smile, to produce proof of the union before dawn. Outside, your father counts the silver, weighing it in his palm. They say these marriages kept tribes from killing each other, and perhaps they did. But older women tell a quieter truth when they grind grain at sunrise, that marriage then was survival. A woman alone was a target. A woman exchanged was at least protected by a name, even if it wasn't hers. You lift your eyes to the black river beyond the wall. Reflections of torches tremble on its surface like broken stars. You imagine dropping the seal into that current, watching it vanish, taking your new name with it. But you don't. You let the water keep its secrets. Thousands of years later, archaeologists will find these contracts stacked like bones beneath the sand. They'll marvel that the earliest word for wife, dam, shares its root with home and blood. Even in bureaucracy, something human glimmers through. You breathe in, the smell of clay and smoke filling your lungs. You breathe out, and time collapses. Now the hum around you changes. It's softer, mechanical, the faint buzz of a heater, the rustle of sheets. The torches fade into the glow of a bedside lamp, but the feeling, the mixture of hope, surrender, and survival remains the same. Every wedding since still carries its echo. Let your breath match the slow rhythm of ancient drums. The night stretches wider than it has in 5,000 years, and you are still there. somewhere between ink and dream. The centuries slide forward, smooth as river stones, clay becomes parchment, kingdoms rise, fall, and leave their laws behind like molted skin. Now it is Greece. Around the 5th century BCE, the age of philosophers and poets, marble columns and sharpened spears. But for women, the story hasn't changed much. A wedding is still a transaction, just wrapped in cleaner language. You are 16. The day is bright, cruelly bright. In the courtyard, jars of olive oil shimmer in the sun like liquid gold, part of the dowry your father has promised. Beside them, bolts of dyed linen, a carved wooden chest, and a small bronze mirror that once belonged to your mother. They've been polishing it for hours, not because you'll need it, but because it proves value, proof that you come from a house that can afford reflection. Inside, your father speaks to the man who will soon be your husband. He's twice your age, a soldier turned merchant with thick fingers and a scar that runs through his beard. They talk quietly about drachmas, land, fertility, alliances, everything except you. The transaction is almost done. All that remains is the ritual of consent, though consent is only a word for ceremony's sake. In Athens, historians say the nga, the pledge, was spoken by men alone. It went like this: I give her to you for the ploughing of legitimate children. A strange phrase, half blessing, half business. You stand behind the doorway, hearing your name like a price being called in a marketplace. When the ceremony begins, you are dressed in saffron, the colour of sunlight and submission. Your hair is combed with an iron pin, then veiled with a long white cloth that smells faintly of myrrh. A priest burns barley on a small altar, its smoke curling toward the open sky. The gods are invited, but they do not attend. A woman sings, maybe your aunt, maybe someone hired. Her voice trembles as she leads the procession through the narrow streets. Children throw dried figs and acorns in your path, symbols of fertility. The neighbours cheer. Someone shouts a toast. It sounds festive, almost joyful, but the undercurrent is different. A relief that another daughter is settled, another deal secured. As the sun dips, torches are lit. The flicker paints the walls red. You can feel the weight of the garland around your neck. Laurel leaves strung with gold thread, heavy enough to leave faint marks on your collarbone. Your new husband takes your hand, rough and calloused. His grip is firm, not unkind, but possessive, as if he's claiming a parcel of earth. You walk together toward his home, the crowd following with laughter, pipes and drum beats that grow louder with every step. Later, inside the wedding chamber, the music stops. The door closes. A bowl of water from the sacred spring sits at your feet. You wash your hands, your face, the dust from your ankles, a symbolic cleansing. He pours a small libation to Hera, protector of marriage, and touches the side of your face as though testing the surface of something newly purchased. Outside, your mother waits with other women, listening for the muffled words that will confirm the union has been sealed. They call this moment euphemia, the good speech, but silence often fills it instead. Not every story ends in sorrow. Archaeological letters from Lesbos and Delphi tell of marriages where affection bloomed later, quietly like ivy finding its path along stone. A husband gifting his wife a spindle carved with her name, a wife weaving his likeness into the border of a robe. Small gestures that mean I see you, even in a world where love was secondary to lineage. Still, the law remains cold. In Athens, a woman cannot own property, vote, or appear in court. She is forever Kyrios, under guardianship. Even her dowry, the wealth she brings, returns to her father's house if she dies childless. Marriage for her is both cage and protection. You imagine standing on the roof that night, the city stretching below, the Parthenon glowing with torchlight, the smell of roasting lamb drifting through the air. Somewhere down the slope, philosophers argue about virtue, about freedom, about the soul. None of them mention women. The stars look close enough to touch, yet impossibly far away. And yet, beneath the laws, beneath the ink and the speeches, something begins to shift. At weddings now, brides carry a torch, a symbol of the hearth they will tend. When it's handed to you, you feel its warmth on your face, the pulse of fire through the metal base. For the first time, the ritual feels less like surrender and more like endurance, as if within this exchange there hides a secret kind of power, to keep the flame alive, to feed it, to shape it. The poets notice it first. Sappho writes of longing as something divine. Euripides gives his heroines voices sharp as daggers. Even the gods, it seems, begin to fall in love. Hera still presides, but now Aphrodite hovers at the edges, whispering that maybe, just maybe, a union could be more than survival. You close your eyes. The torch flickers. The air smells of salt and honey, wine and wool. You breathe it in slowly. Somewhere beyond the walls, a flute continues to play, a soft, uneven note that wavers and finds its tune again. You imagine it drifting upward, out across the Aegean, toward another wedding, another promise. Now your breath finds a slower rhythm. You hear your own heartbeat, steady and warm. The centuries keep turning, and the story moves with them, from trade to tradition, from vow to hope. You are part of it now, carried through time by the quiet sound of feet on marble floors. The night softens, the music fades, and you drift forward toward another world, another bride, another bargain yet to be made. The world shifts west again. Marble gives way to marble still, but smoother, grander, gilded with empire. You search in Rome, the 1st century BCE. The air smells of hot iron and fig smoke. The streets echo with sandals and shouts. Here, weddings have become performances, contracts cloaked in theatre, gilded by spectacle. But beneath the music and the laurel wreaths, the same truth lingers. The bride is still a transaction, only better dressed. It begins at dawn. Trumpets call through narrow alleys. The bride sits on a carved ivory stool, her hair parted into 6 braids, the Sini crimes, the same style worn by the ancient Vestal virgins, though she is not pure, only prepared. Servants dust her hair with yellow powder from the crocus flower. Her veil, the flammeum, glows orange-red like a captured sunset. It is meant to resemble fire, to symbolize modesty, or to warn that she will now belong to another hearth. In a nearby courtyard, the groom signs the tabulae nuptiales, the wedding contract. Wax tablets, witnesses, a notary. The dowry is declared: 2 slaves, 20 silver denarii, and 1 vineyard south of the Tiber. The law calls it does, but the meaning is ancient, a payment to ensure the bride's obedience and the husband's status. Without a dowry there can be no marriage. Without property no woman can stand alone. When the ceremony begins, the priest mutters the conferiscio, a sacred rite older than the Republic itself. You sit on a sheepskin, hold a loaf of spelt bread in your lap, and repeat the vows: Ubi tu Gaius, ego Gaia. Where you are Gaius, I am Gaia. One line to erase a lifetime. The bread is broken, shared between you, a meal with the gods as witness. Historians will later write that this breaking of bread may be where Christian communion took its image, but here it binds rather than frees. You take a bite, it tastes dry, almost chalky. In the silence that follows, the ring is placed on your left hand. Gold, small, unadorned. Romans believed that a vein, the vena amoris, ran directly from that finger to the heart. It sounds romantic, but it isn't yet about love. The ring is not a promise of devotion, it is a mark of possession. A circle without beginning or end, symbolizing not eternity but closure. You can feel the weight of it even now, small and heavy against your skin. The women around you murmur blessings. May she be fruitful. May she be faithful. A friend ties 3 woolen cords around your waist. The cingulum, each knot represents duty, to husband, to gods, to home. She ties them tightly. You smile, though it pinches when you breathe. Outside, torches flicker against the pale stone of the forum. Crowds gather to watch the procession. Children scatter rose petals. Men lift wine cups and shout crude jokes meant to bring luck. You walk beneath a canopy held by 4 boys, one for each corner of the world you're now bound to. The veil glows under torchlight, the scent of resin thick in the air. Someone tosses nuts, a symbol of your childhood, and the sound of their clatter on stone follows you down the street like fading laughter. At the threshold of your new home, you stop. The door is smeared with animal fat and decorated with wool. You hesitate, but the crowd urges you forward. According to tradition, you must not stumble. It would be a bad omen. So your husband lifts you in his arms and carries you across, not out of romance, but to keep you from tripping. He sets you down before the hearth. The flame flares, a small sun at the center of your new universe. In the dim light, you see your reflection in a bronze mirror. The veil makes you ghostly, half woman, half flame. You remember your mother sits whisper from that morning. A good marriage is like fire. It warms, but it burns if you forget respect. You nod to the flicker, unsure if it's a blessing or a warning. Historians write that Roman wives were more independent than their Greek sisters. Some managed estates, hosted salons, even advised senators. But beneath that freedom ran iron. The law called it manus, hand. To marry was to come under the hand of a man. He could divorce you by sending a messenger to say, "Keep your things. Your dowry, your ring, your children, all his." Only widows, paradoxically, tasted freedom. A few defied it. One letter from Pompeii describes a woman named Livia, who refused to remarry after her husband's death. She keeps his ring, the writer says, but not his silence. Her neighbors call her strange, her slaves call her kind. History barely remembers her, but she stands in the background of every statue of Venus, unbowed. The city grows quiet. Somewhere, a lyre plucks a low melody. You sit by the fire, tracing the edge of the ring with your thumb. It gleams in the half-dark like a trapped sunbeam. You wonder how many hands have worn such a circle, how many women have felt its promise and its prison both at once. Later, when you lie down, the wool belt still presses into your ribs. You untie one knot, then another, leaving the last for morning. The hearth crackles. The smell of smoke mingles with the faint sweetness of wine. Outside, rain begins to fall, washing the streets clean, carrying away petals, ash, and laughter. It is said that Roman brides kept small statues of household gods, the lares, by their bedsides to guard dreams and fertility. You close your eyes, feeling the world shrink to the soft flicker of flame and the ring's subtle weight. You whisper a prayer, not to Jupiter, not to Venus, but to whoever listens when women pray for gentler futures. And in that moment, the empire feels distant. The ring, lighter. The air, softer. You drift, carried on the sound of rain, as the centuries prepare to turn again, toward new altars, new vows, and the fragile beginning of something like love. The centuries dim and shift. Rome falls, its temples stripped for stone, its gods fading into whispers. Across the ruins, another faith begins to rise, quiet at first, then thunderous. By the 9th century, the cross replaces the laurel wreath, and wedding torches are carried not to pagan hearths, but to church doors. Still, beneath the hymns and candles, something older breathes, the same trembling need for protection, for blessing, for luck against the unknown. You are in a small village in Normandy, around the year 870. The morning smells of rain-soaked hay and smoke from peat fires. Inside a timber house, women pin your hair with bone combs, twisting it into braids. They slip a wreath of rue and rosemary over your head, not for beauty, but to keep away evil spirits that are said to hover near brides. The rosemary scratches your scalp, Its scent clings to your breath. Outside, the priest waits by the door of the wooden church, its roof patched with straw. In these years, marriages are not yet sacred sacraments. They're half pagan, half Christian, a blending of prayers and old magic. The priest holds a cross. Your aunt carries a bowl of glowing coals. From them she lights 2 candles, the sacred fires that will follow you to your husband's house. If they blow out before you arrive, the marriage is cursed. The villagers gather in the mud, pulling cloaks tight against the drizzle. Chickens scatter as the procession begins. Your dress is simple, woven from undyed wool, and over it hangs a heavy red cloak, the colour of protection. The priest murmurs Latin words that few understand. When he reaches the line, et erunt duo in carne una, and the 2 shall be one flesh, the crowd crosses themselves, half from reverence, half from fear. Superstition has replaced law. In this world, demons lurk in shadows. Omens hang in every gust of wind. A cat crossing your path, a crow calling twice, each can spoil a union. So as you walk, children throw handfuls of salt into the mud before your feet. Your mother whispers charms under her breath. No spirit follows where salt has fallen. At the church door, your groom waits. He smells of horses and iron, his hair damp from the rain. You've met him twice before, once when his father measured your family's field, and again when the dowry was agreed upon, 3 cows, 2 blankets, and your mother's silver cross. You nod to him, but you don't smile. It wouldn't be proper. The priest joins your hands, wraps them with the end of his stole, and blesses you both. He sprinkles holy water, but you feel the cold drops fall like the last remnants of older rituals, echoes of the rivers and wells once used by pagans for the same purpose. Then the priest says something new, something unheard in older times, that this union once made cannot be undone. No longer a trade, not quite yet a covenant, but the door is closing on the idea of choice. Inside the church, candles flicker. The air tastes of wax and wood smoke. You can hear the wind pushing against the walls, like a restless spirit. Your groom offers you a sip of wine, a shared cup that seals the vow. Some say it's a symbol of the blood of Christ. Others whisper it's a relic of an older rite, when couples drank mead to sweeten their union and their tongues. When you step outside again, the village bell begins to ring. Each toll chases away unseen things. The fires in your candles still burn. Relief ripples through the crowd. As you walk toward the groom's house, women scatter herbs, juniper, nettle, yarrow, each for luck, each for fertility, each to keep the devil at bay. But not all omens can be controlled. A dog howls in the distance, and someone mutters that it means you'll bear no sons. Your aunt spits into her palm and draws a circle in the air, a quick secret sign from the old faith. The feast begins at sunset. Tables groan under loaves of barley bread, roasted goose, apples baked with honey. The air is thick with laughter and mead. Your husband raises a cup, offering the first toast to God, to home, to sons. Around you the room glows, yet every candle has its shadow. Behind the joy there's always fear of barrenness, of plague, of a curse slipped in with the blessings. Later, when the fire burns low, the women lead you to the bed. They untie your hair, one braid for each virtue they hope you'll keep. Someone whispers the charm of knots, a prayer half in Latin, half in the old tongue. What is bound tonight may no spirit unbind. Outside, rain begins to drum against the shutters, 1,000 soft fingers marking the rhythm of new life and old superstition. As the years pass, weddings become more solemn, more bound to the church. By the 12th century, the Pope himself declares marriage a sacrament. It is no longer merely a social contract, it is now a reflection of divine order. Yet even then, beneath the sanctity, the ancient fears remain. In parts of England, brides still carry iron keys or pins hidden in their sleeves to ward off witches. In Germany, they scatter ashes at crossroads so the dead can't follow. And across Europe, no one dares marry in May. It is said the devil walks among the blossoms. You picture all those brides across centuries, their hearts hammering beneath silk or wool, each believing that one misstep could doom her forever. The candles, the knots, the coins, the salt, all armor against an invisible world. Yet amid it all, there are moments of tenderness. A groom pausing to adjust his bride's cloak in the cold. A woman laughing softly when the wine spills on her sleeve. Love still exists here, fragile and hidden, like a candle flame cupped against the wind. You sit by the hearth long after the feast, the room filled with the scent of ashes and apples. Your new husband sleeps beside you, his breath steady. You reach for the candle that burned through the ceremony, its wick now a small red ember, and watch the smoke twist into the rafters. For the first time you feel something shift, something that doesn't belong to priest or family or God, something private, yours. You exhale. The sound of rain fades into the rhythm of your own pulse. In another century, brides will still wear white to keep ghosts away. They will still fear bad omens, still toss salt, still hope the candle doesn't go out too soon. But for now, here in this small house beneath the wet thatch and the smell of burning wood, you are safe. The fire flickers, the shadows soften, and time tilts again toward cathedrals and courts, toward vows that begin to speak of choice and tenderness, toward the slow, reluctant birth of love itself. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive. The bells of the old church still toll, but their sound changes as the centuries turn. The echo travels farther, carried by the wind of a new age, the Renaissance, the age of letters and art, of discovery and doubt. The air of Europe smells of ink, of sea salt, of paint mixed with oil. For the first time in 1,000 years, men begin to write about beauty not as sin but as something holy in itself. And from that shift, a quiet revolution begins, one that will change the meaning of marriage forever. You open your eyes in Florence, around the year 1480. The morning is pale, brushed with the gold of a Tuscan dawn. A bell calls from the Duomo, its tone steady and solemn. Somewhere nearby, a boy hums a love song, the kind banned by priests but whispered by artists. The city hums with trade and ambition. Silk merchants bargain beneath painted loggias. Apprentices carry jars of pigment through narrow alleys. Above them all, the towers of the Medici shimmer with frescoes and pride. And today one of those towers holds your wedding feast. You stand before a mirror of polished metal, the only one your family owns. It distorts your face slightly, but that seems fitting. This day is a mirror too, showing both who you are and who you must now become. Your gown is heavy, layered with brocade and velvet, its sleeves embroidered with pomegranates, a symbol of fertility and faithfulness. A gold chain rests around your neck, the same chain your mother wore when she married. Once that chain meant ownership. Now it means inheritance, continuity. The difference is small, but you can feel it. In another room, your father negotiates the final details of the marriage contract. The groom's family offers 30 gold florins and a share in a vineyard near Pisa. He is a banker's son, educated, polite, and only a few years older than you. The match was arranged but not forced. When you first met him at a festival last spring, he quoted lines from Petrarch, that new poet everyone talks about. Lines about love not as danger but as devotion. You didn't understand them fully, but his voice was gentle, and that was enough. The ceremony takes place in a chapel filled with the smell of lilies and warm wax. The priest speaks of sacrament and covenant, of God's love reflected through human union. The light from the stained glass paints your hands in colour, red, blue, gold. It feels less like transaction, more like transformation. When you look at your husband, you see not the pride of possession, but something quieter, a question waiting to be answered. Historians will later call this the age when marriage began to shift from property to partnership. Yet the change is uneven, fragile. In Florence, Love is now fashionable to speak of, but still dangerous to act upon. Too much passion can ruin a family's name, too little, and a wife is pitted. Somewhere between those extremes, the idea of romantic love begins to take root. After the vows, you walk through the courtyard where vines climb the walls and fountains whisper among marble nymphs. Guests throw rose petals instead of grain. A musician plays the lute softly, singing of Venus and of virtue. The air smells of citrus and wine. In this world of art and reason, every symbol acquires new meaning. The ring, once a mark of ownership, is now a promise freely spoken. The veil, once a barrier, becomes a gesture of modesty, something to be lifted, not imposed. Later, in the quiet of evening, you and your husband stand on a balcony overlooking the Arno. The sky glows violet. Below, the river carries lanterns released by other couples, their lights drifting toward the sea. He reaches for your hand, hesitates, then entwines his fingers with yours. No priest instructs him to do it. It is an instinct, simple and human. For a moment, history loosens its grip. In these years, the poets speak of love as a mirror of the divine. Dante's Beatrice, Shakespeare's Juliet, they turn desire into destiny, tragedy into something sacred. Across Europe, songs and sonnets replace contracts and ledgers as the language of the heart. Yet not everyone welcomes this change. Preachers warn that too much tenderness leads to ruin. Some husbands burn their wives' letters. Some wives hide poems inside prayer books. Love still has to disguise itself as duty. But even within arranged marriages, something new flickers companionship. You begin to see husbands teaching their wives to read, wives sketching in their husbands' notebooks, both laughing quietly at mistakes. The home becomes not only a site of obedience, but of shared creation. In this age, the first portraits of couples appear, not rigid or regal, but side by side, hands nearly touching, eyes turned toward one another. You imagine them a baker's wife holding her child while her husband repairs a roof, a noble woman writing a letter by candlelight while her husband dreams of trade across the sea. These are small, ordinary acts, but they are revolutions all the same. Your own husband surprises you one night with a book, thin, bound in soft leather, titled Di Amore, on love. Inside are passages about loyalty, respect, and friendship. He reads aloud until your eyes close. The words blur into the murmur of the river outside, into the slow, rhythmic sound of two people breathing in time. Love does not erase the old fears. Mothers still warn daughters to be modest. Priests still speak of duty. Merchants still count dowries. But now, at least, there is the faint possibility that affection might coexist with obligation. That choice might one day stand beside tradition, not beneath it. Years pass. The world grows wider. Sailors bring spices and stories from lands across the ocean. Women begin to write under false names. Letters, poems, even treatises on marriage. One of them, Christine de Pizan, argues that a virtuous union should rest not on wealth, but on mutual respect. Her words ripple quietly through Europe like a secret current, changing minds one household at a time. You grow older. Your marriage endures. Not perfect, not easy, but balanced like the scales your husband once used to measure gold. There are quarrels and silences, laughter and reconciliation. When plague comes, you care for each other in turns. When it passes, you plant a new olive tree by the window. It grows slowly, stubbornly, through wars and winters. Every spring it blooms again, white flowers trembling in the wind. Sometimes you wonder if love itself is like that tree, born of duty, surviving on faith, yet blooming only through tenderness. You will never know for certain, but you have lived long enough to see the world soften. Your daughters speak of marrying for affection, not arrangement. The word consent begins to appear in sermons and laws. It's a small word, but it feels enormous. One evening, as the sun sinks beyond the Arno, you sit by the fire and watch your grandchildren play. The room smells of lavender and old paper. You touch the ring on your hand. Thinner now, worn smooth by decades. It no longer feels like a shackle but like a thread, linking all the women before you to all the women yet to come. You close your eyes. The air hums with the faint sound of bells from the Duomo. Each note seems softer, kinder than it once was. The world has not changed completely. Not yet. But its heart beats differently now. From bargain to bond. From property to promise. From silence to speech. Love has begun to speak its own name. And as sleep gathers around you, the centuries shift again toward empire and empire's end, toward white dresses and vows whispered in languages that no one in Florence could yet imagine. The olive tree rustles outside your window, its blossoms glowing pale against the dark. You breathe in, slow and deep, as the night folds you into its arms. The centuries quicken. Carriages replace horses, machines replace hands, and the world begins to hum with new rhythms. The pulse of the 19th century, the age of industry and empire, the age when steam and sentiment intertwine. The air smells of coal and perfume, of iron and violets. Newspapers whisper across continents, and wedding announcements now appear in print beside political scandals and death notices. A marriage has become a public event, a performance of purity, of progress, of love refined into ideal. You wake in Victorian England, around 1850. London is a blur of fog and carriage wheels, of bells chiming through soot-streaked skies. Your home stands near Kensington, its windows heavy with lace. It is the morning of your wedding day, and the world outside smells faintly of rain and horse sweat and roses, packed in wagons for market. Servants whisper through the halls, carrying ribbons, gloves, a box of ivory hairpins. Somewhere downstairs the photographer sets up his tripod, a dark cloth ready to trap a moment in silver. In the mirror, you hardly recognize yourself. Your dress, white, heavy with silk, gleams against the grey light like a snowfall caught indoors. Until a few decades ago, white was rare, reserved for mourning or the wealthy. Then, in 1840, Queen Victoria wore it to her own wedding, and an empire followed. Now, every bride who can afford it imitates her. The colour once meant sorrow, now it means virtue, cleanliness, purity, the illusion of perfection. The seamstress kneels to smooth the fabric at your feet. She's older, her fingers calloused from years of work. "They'll write about you," she says softly, pinning the last fold of the hem. The paper always prints the colour. You smile, though the corset presses your ribs tight enough that breath comes shallow. Fashion, they say, is discipline, and marriage in its way is too. Your father waits below, proud, anxious, rehearsing the words he'll say when he gives you away. It's still a transaction, though the language has changed. The dowry is gone, replaced by reputation and propriety. What he offers now is not property, but proof that you are respectable, educated, ready to play your part in the great domestic ideal. The angel in the house, they call it in magazines, a phrase meant to sound poetic, but it feels more like a cage made of silk and prayer. The carriage jolts as it rolls toward the church. Streets glisten with last night's rain, children wave from the curb. Inside, the air smells of lilacs and beeswax. The organ begins, low and trembling, a sound like thunder softened by distance. You walk down the aisle, your arm looped through your father's. The train of your dress sweeps over stone polished by generations of brides. And as the priest's voice rises, to have and to hold, for richer, for poorer, something shifts. For the first time, the word love appears not as whisper, but as law. It's a small revolution, hidden inside ritual. A wife is still expected to obey, to serve, to yield, but now, in the eyes of society, marriage without affection begins to look incomplete. Novelists feed the dream. Charlotte Bronte, George Eliot, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, they write of women who choose, who desire, who think. Their stories scandalize and soothe at once. Behind every proper ceremony lurks their ghost, a question: what if love itself were the vow? Outside the church, rain begins again, light as dust. Your husband lifts your veil. his touch careful, uncertain. There's a flash from the photographer's lamp, a burst of smoke, a smell of burnt magnesium. In that frozen image, you both look solemn, almost frightened, as though you understand that history is watching. And perhaps it is. Across the world, colonies echo the fashions of London. In India, brides still wear red. In China, gold, yet the white dress spreads like myth. Purity exported, empire wrapped in silk. At the reception, crystal clinks, violins sigh. Guests gossip about railways, inheritance, the coming war in Crimea. You barely hear them. Your husband leans close and says, half whisper, half promise, tomorrow no one will watch. We'll just walk by the river. You nod, unsure whether to believe him, but his voice is gentle, and that feels new enough to count as hope. Years pass. The city grows louder, faster. You trade carriages for trains, oil lamps for gaslight. Children are born, laughter fills the house. Love doesn't stay constant. It shifts shape, becomes quieter, like a flame burning low but steady. Then comes grief. A pandemic, a loss, another beginning. Through it all, the white dress remains folded in a cedar chest, its colour fading to ivory, its fabric heavy with memory. When you touch it, the scent of time rises, dust, lavender, a trace of smoke from long ago candles. The century turns. Steamships cross oceans. Telegrams flash words faster than thought. Women march in the streets now, demanding votes, rights, voices. Some burn marriage certificates in protest, calling them chains. Others write poems about equal love. The war arrives, tearing Europe open, scattering brides and grooms across muddy fields. For a while, weddings become hurried affairs. Uniforms instead of suits, borrowed rings, vows whispered at train stations. The white dress survives in photographs, its meaning shifting once more, no longer purity, but courage. In the 1920s, music changes. The air fills with jazz, laughter, defiance. Veils shorten, hemlines rise, champagne replaces prayer. Love begins to look like choice, or at least the illusion of it. By mid-century, ceremonies spread across radios and cinema screens, soft focused dreams of domestic bliss. Yet even then, under all the glamour, the same old echoes stir. The ring still circles the finger, the words still bind, the past still hums beneath the orchestra's swell. Now the world glows with electric light. The century grows digital, impatient. Weddings move from cathedrals to gardens, to beaches, to rooftops under stars. Some couples marry barefoot, others live stream their vows to strangers. Love letters become emails, proposals captured in pixels. And still, across cultures and screens, the gestures remain. The joining of hands, the promise before witnesses, the quiet belief that two lives can share one rhythm. But the white dress has changed again. It no longer belongs to purity, but to memory. Some brides wear red or black, some none at all. Others inherit their grandmother's lace and pair it with sneakers. The symbol has loosened, softened, adapted, just as love has. The vow that once chained has learned to bend. You stand now in a small chapel by the sea. The windows are open. The air smells of salt and eucalyptus. The guests are few. The music simple. A single violin. A hum of waves. When the officiant speaks, the words are almost the same as they were centuries ago. Yet something feels different. There is no contract, no dowry, no fear. Only two people standing still while the wind moves through their hair. You slip the ring onto the finger of the one before you. The metal is cool, light, old as empire and earth. You think of every bride before you. The girl in Mesopotamia with oil on her hands, the Greek maiden under torchlight, the Roman woman with a circle of gold, the Norman peasant clutching a candle, the Florentine wrapped in brocade, the Victorian bound in silk. They are all here layered beneath your skin, whispering through time. This too is ours. Outside, gulls cry against the wind. The world is no less uncertain than it was 5,000 years ago, but the ceremony feels softer now, not a claim, but a covenant. When you kiss, it is not for witness or record. It is for memory, for faith in something that has outlived every empire. Later, when the guests have gone, you walk barefoot along the sand. The hem of your dress brushes the tide, gathering salt. The sky darkens, and for a moment you see the reflection of your ring glinting in the water. A circle without beginning or end, but open now, endless as the sea. You breathe, the air is cool, the horizon quiet. In the fading light you realize the truth. Love was never invented. It was only rediscovered, again and again, dressed in new colors, bound by new words, but always the same heartbeat beneath. And as the waves draw slow and steady over the shore, you let that thought settle into stillness. The sound of the ocean becomes the sound of breath, the rise and fall of centuries resting. The old symbols, the torches, the knots, the rings, dissolve into foam. You're safe now. That world, with all its bargains and blessings, fades behind you. The fire burns low. The air softens. The heart steadies. 5,000 years of vows, and still the story ends in quiet, two hands meeting. A single promise, the hush before sleep. Sweet dreams.